Hey, everybody, and welcome to another one of my live streams where I interview talented IT professionals who got endorsed for the UK Global Talent Visa. My name is Nadia. I'm a UK Global Talent Visa recipient and coach. I got endorsed for the visa last year as a software engineer, and ever since I've been obsessed with this topic and basically cannot stop talking about it for some reason. So, really glad to see you join and watch this recording. If you're watching this as a recording, if this is live, make sure to say hi in chat and make sure to ask your questions about this visa to me and my guest. We'll be both very happy to answer any questions that you can come up with. Today, I'm joined by Marcelo. Let me bring him up on the screen. Hey, Marcelo. Marcelo is an independent data scientist from Bolivia. Hello, welcome.
Hey Nadia. Hi everyone.
How is your day going? How are you?
Yeah, good. Lots of work today, but
Yeah.
generally like it's quite sunny, so it's something great.
Yeah, it is. The days are getting longer. My background is no longer dark when I do live stream, so that's promising. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for spending the time here. Maybe we can start with some intros that we usually do in the beginning. I'm thinking today that we are going to try something a little bit different. We'll talk about the visa story and all the usual ins and outs of preparing the documents, but also towards the end, I wanted to talk about just the general immigration experience, your story in terms of getting used to the UK, your like motivation for moving. So we can talk about it later. So generally, if you're watching this, make sure to ask your questions if you're curious about Bolivia or in general South America. If you have any questions, I think it's a unique opportunity to ask them here. So yeah, let's start with the intro. So why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of your professional background and what led you to decide to move to the UK?
Yeah, sure. So actually, like, I started my studies in Switzerland. I had a scholarship to study there, and I did economic and finance. And then towards the end of it, I work in a private bank, and I enjoyed more like the software side rather than the finance side. So then I decided to transition to do more like tech related work. And at the same time, I finished my studies. I moved back to Bolivia, and for like some personal reasons, like my ex-girlfriend at the time was I was supposed to move back to Europe, and at the same time, I was transitioning to data science. So I found that UCL had a really great master's degree in machine learning. So like yeah, but because of those two reasons, I decided to move to London. And yeah, so I moved as a student, I would say, at the beginning.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Can you explain to viewers what UCL is for those who are not familiar?
Oh yeah, it's University College of London. Um, it's yeah, it's quite a good university. Like I really enjoyed my time there. Very intense though. Like it's a very
Mm.
intense year. I think
So
a
was
difference. Oh, sorry, no,
Go ahead.
just like
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Um, most of master's degrees in Europe last for 2 years, whereas in the UK they last for 1 year. So I think that was also part of the equation. Like it was much faster, not to start working.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, I heard about it, but I didn't actually think that this might be a reason to choose UK, a benefit. But from what I've heard, master's degrees in the UK tend to be much more expensive than they are in Europe. Was this your experience as well?
Uh, yeah. I mean, to be honest, like yeah, a good part of my savings went to it.
Yeah.
But because I had a scholarship for the undergrad, it was, I mean, in my case, it was okay-ish.
Okay. Yeah, I see. So I'm hearing that a lot of this motivation to come here came from the fact that the UK is a good place for academic reasons, right? To further your academic journey. So could you tell us a little bit more about the visa process? So what kind of visa did you initially move with here, and what was kind of the development of your visa story?
Yeah, actually, like now that you ask me about it, like I found that like getting that initial student visa was a bit even harder than getting the the global talent one, because you have to um, submit a lot of like documents, and like because I studied in Switzerland, I had to translate them from French to English, and then some of the other documents I had to translate them from Spanish to English. Then you have to prove that you have enough money in your bank account to support you during the year, which is, I mean, they ask for quite a lot of money for like, I would say like a Bolivian like standard income. So there was also this process of like just getting people to like lend you some money, or like, yeah, the bank takes longer. So like what I remember we did was like get some loans from like family or friends, and then they have to stay in the bank account for like I think 6 weeks or so when you apply. So it's like things that you don't think about it when you are applying, like these little things that, for example, the money has to be there for 6 weeks, and then when you're going to submit your application, they tell you that, and then you have to like delay your application till the time has passed. Like I remember this being like something a bit tricky at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess, yeah, the logistics, no, of like every time like you move a country, it's quite
Yeah.
difficult.
So I guess this is the benefit actually of the global talent visa, because for global talent you don't need to prove that you have money in your bank account. But as
Yeah.
one of my recent guests said, you pay so much money for the visa itself that it kind of shows that you have money in a way. So, but there is no logistical issues of like borrowing money for, from relatives and showing it. But I think that this is actually very useful for people watching this, because I do get viewers and people commenting from countries around the world who really worry about the costs of moving here, and maybe we can discuss this later as well. So you moved here on the student visa, right? This was how long ago?
So it was like on 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's quite 7 years ago. And you spent a few years, a year, right, doing the masters. What was your journey afterwards? How did you stay in the UK afterwards?
So like I remember something that like everybody, like I had some friends that were here, like that I met when I was staying in Switzerland, or also like friends of of my ex-girlfriend, things like that. And everybody was saying that like if you want a job, you should apply 1 year before. And I was, I mean, I arrived, and then in the like my master was just going to last one
Yeah.
year, so I had to apply almost at the same time as when I arrived, which was a bit strange to me and a bit stressful, no? And I
Mm-hmm.
started doing some applications, but I was also mainly focusing on my studies. So at some point, I decided, okay, I'll just put more effort into studying, and then when I'm a bit more free, or like maybe one semester has passed, then I start looking for jobs or anything else. So I did that, and it was again a bit, I would say, stressful sometimes, because I remember getting offers, but then from some startups, and then they realize they don't have the sponsorship permit that you need when you are transitioning from a student visa to a working visa. So I had to keep looking, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. And then like yeah, I ended up like finding a job in a startup that was like a spin-off of university. Um, and yeah, they were quite helpful because they had lawyers, and they could like the lawyers took charge of everything. I just had to submit the documents that they asked me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of people go through this who are switching to who want to come here initially without any visa, or who are currently on the skilled worker visa and they urgently need to find a new job. This is when they realize that they have to find a job with a company who has this license from the home office to sponsor visas, which is one of the biggest issues with skilled worker visa that people mention to me on this channel. Just finding this job, like finding a job is hard, especially in this economic climate, but you also have this additional burden of finding somebody who will sponsor your visa. So I think it's good that you got some help from the university and at least some support, which is nice. And usually if you move here on a skilled worker visa, you usually get some sort of relocation support for your employer. So usually your employer will handle this process as well. So it makes it a little bit more just a little bit easier. So how was it? How was your life? What was your life like when you had the skilled worker visa, which is like much maligned on this channel and people hate it, but it's a visa that a lot of people use. So what was it your experience like on this visa?
Initially, like personally, it was a bit of relief because then there is no more like stress of looking for a job or like knowing or not knowing that if you're going to stay here. On the other hand, and I mean, I think it's good at the beginning. It's fine. Like then, I mean, I also realized like the cost of life it's quite high in general here, and like starting salaries, I would say they are not crazy high compared to some countries. Like I mean, having studied and worked a bit in Switzerland,
Yeah.
I felt a bit
Yeah.
the decrease on that.
Yeah, you just
um,
said that starting salaries are not great, and I'm like, you know, it's not like then every salary is amazing. So yeah, I feel I kind of feel your pain, and in terms of, I think that the shock that some people experience here is when they start kind of comparing the cost of living with the salary, right? And then it hits them, especially if people are moving from some big cities, like, and who were very well paid before in their IT profession. They move here to London, and their salary is kind of the same, but then they realize that the costs are so much higher, and they, I think, get really shocked. So I think it's important to talk about this for immigrants, so that people mentally prepare for the costs. And just, I don't think that it means that you shouldn't move to the UK, although this was a topic that we can also discuss. But I think it helps to be prepared, right, for like how much can you make when you move, and also really work hard on making sure that you negotiate really well with your jobs if you relocate, right?
yeah, definitely. Like I think that's something that as somebody else transitioning from a student visa to a working visa, usually you just take the first offer that comes
Mm-hmm.
around the table. And then, like, I remember I still had a couple of interviews, but I wouldn't put that much effort to them anymore. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, like, yeah, I think it will be good to like negotiate it. But again, at the same time, you're not sure if like you'll have other offers or like how many you'll get. I mean, fortunately for like data science in general, I think it's quite a good market. Like it's been a good market for the last years, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know like what's going to be like the next years.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's um, it's important to make good calculations in terms of how much salary you will get, how much tax you will pay. Tax is a fun
Mm,
topic. The tax year is ending in 2 days. Good times. So if you're moving here from another country, make sure that you understand how much tax you will pay. There are tax calculators online, right? You can count. And then try to research like real cost of living in London, especially if you're moving to London. You need to be mentally prepared for high costs of basically everything, but especially rent. I think this was, probably something that shocked me most. So yeah, so you transitioned
mm.
to the skilled worker visa. You had to deal with some kind of adjustment in terms of high cost of everything. So how long did you stay on this visa, and what was your experience like? Did you change employers on it, or what was it like in general?
Mm, yeah, so I think I stayed in this visa for a year and a half, roughly. And I think that's when I start getting like, I mean, for example, I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll move to another company, maybe a bigger one, because it was in a startup, and then like I really enjoyed my time with them. Like, it was really good in terms of like learning, in terms of like yeah, I don't know if you've been in a startup, but it's like you have to do everything, and then yeah, it's quite a good experience. But like yeah, I mean the salary wasn't, I wouldn't say was like the best one.
Hmm.
So when I thought about moving to a bigger company, I also checked, and like even if I would get like a salary increase because of the taxes, I wouldn't. it wouldn't be that amazing, to be honest. Like, the net income. And at the same time, I realized that, I mean, I didn't realize, but like it came back to mind the fact that if you have to change employer, the new employer has to sponsor you again. So in the
Mm-hmm.
sense, I mean, you're kind of tied to your employer on your skilled worker visa.
Yeah.
And I think
So.
that made me
Mm-hmm.
consider other avenues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that this feeling of being like owing your existence in the UK to your employer is something that I do find quite unhealthy for grown-up people, and for just for mental health reasons, and to encourage people to research switch into a more normal visa. So this is something that I think you don't really think about until you start being here on this visa, because before, you're very excited about moving to London. You're like, it doesn't matter what kind of visa, I can leave, I can work. But then, yeah, it hits you that it's not really that flexible. So this was the point where you decided that you need to research other options. So what was your process of finding about the global talent visa like? How did you research it? How did you hear about it first? Was it like most of my guests have a friend or a friend of a friend or somebody online who taught them about this? But what was your experience like?
So I remember when I was doing my master thesis and applying for jobs, like I saw this program called Entrepreneur First, and it was like a startup accelerator, but it will fund people rather than companies. And I thought that was interesting. And at the time I applied, but like, yeah, I did a very quick application, so I didn't get through. And then I had a friend that also did the program, and he said it was really great. And so when I was looking for a new avenues, I thought again about it. And yeah, I got a referral to it. I did my application, and I got accepted to the program. And the thing is that because the program is about starting your own company, um, you would need to have a visa that allows you to do that. And under the tier two skilled worker visa, you cannot start like other activities rather than, I mean, other than your actual work. So I asked them about it, and they said that actually if you get into the program, they help you I mean, they help you with like some lawyer advice and yeah, I mean, technically you have to do the application, but they are supportive to it. So like recommendation letters or things like that, and just
Mm-hmm.
like the lawyer advice, which is quite helpful.
So you got into this accelerator. Maybe you can again like super short intro for people who have never heard of it. What is it? What is the purpose of the accelerator, and who is it for? Maybe it will also help somebody who is kind of on this journey of entrepreneurship, but also figuring out the visa. How what is the purpose of it?
So the main purpose is that they will put, I think they select around, at the time they used to select 100 people with diverse or like interesting profiles, and then put them together for 3 months and hope that they will pair up. It's a bit
Mm.
like I think Tinder,
Hmm.
but for co-founders. So like
Yeah.
you start having all these conversations, and then maybe you like start find an idea, and like you get along well with someone, and you have some maybe complementary skills, and the idea is that after 3 months you'll present your idea, and if they are interested in it, they will invest, like they will give you seed funding, and then you'll
Hmm.
continue the program for like 6 months more.
Hmm.
um,
Okay.
so like yeah, I mean, I thought it could be like a really good experience. I wasn't sure if that was, I mean, I knew that at some point I wanted to start a company, but I wasn't maybe completely sure that was the moment. And then like when I did more research, I thought that that would be. It sounds like a great experience, and at the same time, um, I'll if I have the global talent visa, then I wouldn't have to worry again about like being tied to a job or to employer.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think yeah, I think that was a big part of the logic behind it.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. We had some nice comments. I'll just bring them up. Just some praise for the information. I agree. Really great stuff. And congrats. Thanks so much for sharing this. So, how did the this accelerator help you with the getting the global talent visa? And in general, like, what was your process of getting this visa once you decided that you need it and the accelerator said that they will support you?
Um, yeah, I think it took still a while because I remember like the accelerator starting, and I would anyway like I would have to start the program and at the same time do my visa application. And in that sense, like the application process is quite long. No, I remember having like to get like the recommendation letters from relevant people, and then all the evidences um, that I contributed or share my skills. Um, yeah, I think I found it quite difficult. Like even like to write the motivation letter, I had to make the review for many friends. It was like I would think it was like a long process. It took me like around 2 months, I think, to do
Mm.
everything.
Hmm. But did the accelerator did it help you to go through the fast track application or not?
Um, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's still more expensive not to do the fast track
Mm.
one. So
Okay. Okay.
all that part, I mean, the accelerator will give you some like expenses. Like I mean, they won't pay for your visa.
Mm-hmm.
They will just
Okay.
pay you per month. Like at the time, like they pay you like 2,000 per month as like small like salary to support you while you are doing this entrepreneurship. But they don't really pay for the visa.
Mm.
They
Okay.
just
I see.
pay for the lawyers. And
Okay.
it's
I
not
see.
that the lawyer is very tailored to you. It will give you two or three maybe like times you can call them and ask them things. You can send them the documents and they will review it 1 or 2 times and that's it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you still do the bulk of the work on your own on the visa, right?
Most of it, yeah, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are still very helpful. Like they give you very
Yeah.
good. So for example, like they tell you about like, okay, it's safer to apply for exceptional promise, or maybe no, you should try for exceptional talent or things like that.
Mm-hmm. So it's still useful. I'm trying to think whether there is something else useful that we can share because I'm sure that a lot of people who are watching this and who want to switch to this visa, they have some
Mhm.
entrepreneurial ambitions happening as well. So this is an interesting idea. So you were still on the skilled worker. You were doing this accelerator on top of having a job. Is that right?
Yeah, initially I was still working part-time
Mm. Mm-hmm.
because of
Okay.
like the notice period, and I also had like a client that I still have to finish like a
Yeah.
project with. Um, I mean, I would say that it helps you a lot to go through any of these, and there is like quite a few accelerated programs in London, and joining any of them, like on one hand, I think mentally it puts you in the position of like, okay, now that I'm doing this, I need this other visa. So it turns the visa into more like a mean than an objective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So you, as you said, you went through the process yourself with some support from the lawyers from the accelerator. So maybe we can talk about kind of details of the visa preparation process. And this is what we like to discuss on this channel: the criteria and all of that, like concrete stuff that people, I don't know, for some reason don't really share that much. And I'm trying to correct this with this channel and just interviewing people with different professions, what kind of documents they use, how they formulated the evidences for the best possible result. So, in your case, as much as you can remember, as much as you can share, what were the documents like that you used as a data scientist to get endorsed for the global talent visa?
Um, so like during my work, I did research into like graph algorithms, and we published that research. So like that was, for example, part of like evidence of contributing to the to the community. Um, while studying and also while working, we won we won a couple of hackathons, and after we won one of them, we got some interviews at TechCrunch, and that was public. So that was something that was quite concrete to show, as like something that was done outside of your normal job. On the other hand, I got um, some letters from my previous employers. Like I work already as a data scientist when I was in Bolivia for a company that was based in California. So like they also like send me some recommendations. And what else was, I think, yeah, there was like some, like they ask you that if you can like put into diagrams like the projects you worked on, and that, yeah, I just did that, submitted that. Then there was the um yeah, I think those were the main things. Like I remember also like one of the documents was also like my master's degree because I got distinction. So I like the lawyer said that that was quite a good thing to put forward.
Mm-hmm. So,
Um,
so I'm guessing
yeah,
you chose the academic criteria, the fourth one, for the optional.
yeah,
Sounds like it, right? So you
yeah.
used your academic, your research, your distinction in your master's degree. This is interesting because a lot of the times people would say that to get the academic criteria, you have to have a PhD. So it's interesting that you used your master's, which again I think can be useful. But in terms of research, can you tell us a bit more about what kind of research was it, um, so that people can match their own experience to yours and see whether they're at this level of prestige or recognition.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like the startup I was working with, it had like a consulting branch and a research branch. And in between consulting project, we had some time to like collaborate with the researchers. And I did I was working in a paper with a friend that was in the company doing graph-based machine learning algorithms to detect toxicity on molecules. I mean, that was the idea. And yeah, I mean, I remember that actually initially we published it, but so we submitted for review, but it wasn't, I mean, the reviews take quite a bit of time. So it was only public when I submitted to TechNation. Like I was just hoping that it passed through the reviewers, and then it passed eventually. But I think I just sent the archive. I don't know like if you know this, like you can always just publish any paper uh, before it's been reviewed
Mm.
in archive, and that because that already shows that you've done some effort, like if our archive accepts it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in that sense, for example, at the beginning I was thinking like, oh, maybe I shouldn't put this because it hasn't been peer reviewed yet. But they said, I mean, it's still work that you've done and it's published as well. So like, just it's okay to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Did you get endorsed for talent or for promise?
Um, I got endorsed for talent, even though I applied for promise. That was
Nice.
strange, and I didn't realize that until like a year after I got it.
You didn't realize what that you got
that I
endorsed for a
got
different route?
that I got endorsed for talent
Why? Because
because
no.
I mean I did my application from promise.
Okay.
But my friend told me like that if they consider you as talent, they will just endorse you as talent.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, I
Yeah.
never double checked.
Yeah, I think that the reason is that the letter that they send you once you get endorsed is quite difficult to understand. And
Yeah.
I've actually had a case where somebody got endorsed for uh, promise, but they read it the way that they were endorsed for talent, actually. So, warning: if you get endorsed, just read your letter carefully, understand like what's happening, because then it influences how much time you have until your permanent residency. So, does it mean
Mm,
that you kind of got the visa for longer than you need?
a couple of months, yeah.
Okay, okay. So yeah, so it wasn't like a, I don't know, 5 years, 5 years of
Mm,
extra healthcare surcharges. Okay, so
No, no, yeah.
okay, so that's good to know. Okay, interesting. So you got the criteria, the academic criteria for talent, with a master's degree and the research paper. So that's, I think, quite promising for, because people, again, like, people always worry that they don't have enough, and they would have some research papers, but they would worry that maybe this is not enough, like it's good, not good enough, or something like this. So, and your second criteria was it the outside contributions or something like this?
Yeah,
Like
I mean,
outside, yeah.
yeah, there was this like when I used to go back to Bolivia, I'll present like conferences. I presented my master thesis or like the research I was doing. So I got like some letters from university that about doing this. So that was like kind of my contribution.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Okay. I see. And in terms of letters of recommendation, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about who were the experts who were supporting you. You mentioned some of them, but maybe we can go through them once again. And yeah, what kind of people supported you, especially given that you chose the academic criteria, which is a bit more rare, I would say, for tech professionals, because lots of programmers who come to my interviews, they're self-taught, so they don't really offer the academic criteria.
yeah, I think probably that's why it worked as well because I did my master thesis under the supervision of Professor David Barber, who at the moment was the director of machine learning at UCL, and now I think he's the director of like the whole AI department. And yeah, he gave me like a really good recommendation letter. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, because also like, yeah, I was working with one of his PhD students at the moment I was doing my thesis, and then this guy also like ended up working as a research scientist at DeepMind, so it had quite good names, I think, in this sense.
Hmm.
And the other recommendation was from the my previous boss at the company, who was also like a honorary professor at UCL, and he published quite a few books, and yeah, he was also quite a good name, I think, in terms of like of research or academic research.
Yeah, I would say that it always helps to have people with big names behind them to back you, but it's not really a requirement. You can still get a visa if you don't really have people backing you who work at super famous companies or really big universities. But as you said, it certainly helps. I would say that, especially if you're in a situation where you are not 100% sure about your case, I always encourage people to get the experts to be as strong as possible. Like, having recognition helps, and I think that it's very true for the academic world as well. So the name and the university name, they carry a lot of weight. So I think this is something that was useful in your case as well. So in terms of other documents, one that people, I think, never, very often don't know how to write correctly is the personal statement. So the first document that the technician will read once they receive your application. What was your process of writing it, and what do you have any tips for people thinking of how to write it?
Mm, Personally, it helped me a lot. Like I had two friends that were doing the same program as me that passed me their like their motivation letters in terms of a structure. So like then you have an idea of like how to put things together, because at the beginning like I wasn't sure like what to write first, what to write next, and then it made sense. Like when I read a couple of letters, I saw that like you present a bit yourself, like your background, and what have you done so far, and what is your plan looking forward. And then also,
Hmm.
yeah, something that I haven't thought about it, and then I realized when reading these letters was that it helps a lot to say, like, for example, I needed this visa to start a company, but I also mentioned that if that wouldn't work, because I mean like it's quite a risky thing to do, no? What would be my B plan in terms of like my career, no? How else would I contribute to the UK digital economy if I wouldn't have like a company? Um, so yeah, that was quite helpful. And then to have it peer review, that helps also as well. to have like other pair of eyes looking at it.
I agree. I think that having a second person to have a look really helps you detach yourself from the story a little bit and make it more just easier to read, easier to understand. It's always good to have somebody to take a look. And something that you mentioned, I found really insightful that you need to explain how you will make the impact to the UK digital economy, right? As you did. So if you have a plan for a startup, but also you should mention like what is your plan B, what else can you do, and similarly, for people who are switching to this visa from skilled worker, they usually ask me how, like, what should I put inside this personal statement? Because uh, objectively, I'm doing this because there are layoffs all the time, and I don't want to be in this position of high risk. Right? This is like honestly the motivation right now in this current climate. Uh, but I think the personal statement should be about more. Of course, like it should be more about about more than this. It should be telling the story of how you will impact the economy. So there should be some bigger purpose, and like maybe in the immediate term, you plan to continue working at your big company, but long term probably you have some other aspirations, and if you want to get this visa you should have some aspirations, some plans for what you would do it, because there is a skilled worker visa for people who just want to work at the same company and not do anything else, which is fine. But for the global talent, you have to think a little bit bigger than that, because this is the visa with a different purpose, right? So it's important not to confuse what the visa is for. Like every visa has its intent, right? So you actually went through all the visas, right? You went through the visa for studying, which was the student visa, then the visa for working for somebody, which was the skilled worker, and now the global talent visa. So you're well on your way towards the permanent residency, right? Already, we already have it, maybe, or in the process, or close to.
Mm, yeah, I actually already have the citizenship now.
You have the citizenship. Wow, cool. Well, congrats. So you went through like the whole game basically, all the steps.
Yeah,
So
I've been.
what what was it like in general, like going through further on, like once you get the visa, you kind of move towards the settlement, right? So any thoughts on that? Was it difficult in general, or was it pretty straightforward for you?
Um, I think something that is always important to bear in mind is that you need to be here. I think no, you cannot leave for more than 90 days every year if you are to ask for any of these of for like a permanent residency, and as well when asking for like the citizenship. So just like I remember, like I would have to make a note of like how many times I'm traveling or where I'm traveling to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then like I would say like yeah, each application demands some time, and like you want, I guess you want to get it right the first time, no? So you want to be sure that you're uh properly counting everything that like I mean, I don't know, my experience was that to like I will just look 2 or 3 times before sending an application to see that like I'm not missing something.
Mm-hmm. I would say I would double check the numbers, because I think that this requirement is for citizenship, and for permanent residency it's a bit different. But it makes sense that if you are getting permanent residency, you probably want to get citizenship next. But in terms of the exact days, I would encourage people to check the exact numbers and make sure that they count them and they follow the rules for permanent residency and citizenship. So if you're moving here on a global talent visa and your ultimate goal is to get the passport, then you should be aware of this and plan accordingly, kind of from the very beginning, which I think is very useful. And I don't think we talk about this enough. But what the rest of the process, was it pretty straightforward in your experience? Just going through the immigration, the full naturalization process.
Um, it was much easier than the global talent visa because it's not that you need to prove anything further. You just need to comply with everything. Don't do any
Mm,
criminal offense, and keep a record of where you lived. That's very important because they ask you
mm-hmm,
like details of the. I mean, they ask you, yeah, where you lived and from when to when. Um, but then, yeah, it's much easier. Like the permanent residency, and also like and the citizenship is even easier. I would say, like just there is this exam of like life in the UK that you have to pass for like the permanent residency, which I mean, yeah, it demands a bit of time, but it's still, I mean, yeah, it's still not that bad to,
Hmm.
to study for it.
What is the exam like? I have some people that I know who are preparing for the exam, and I just had somebody complain about it that it's quite difficult. What do you have to learn?
I mean, there is some like very not very useful information. Like they ask you who won the Olympic medal on swimming in 1992 or something like that. But it's a lot. I mean, it's 25 questions, like with like multiple choice answers, and you just have to pass. I mean, practice a lot with the online exams, I would say,
Mm,
and like personally, it helped a lot to like. I started by motivating, but like by watching The Crown, and then from there on, I just watch other films, like a bit of read some books of history, and get a bit into the mood, and then just do the like these like repetitive exams, and then I felt it was okay. To be honest, like I actually like I would say that I almost enjoyed it. So it
wow.
was
Yeah, I'm just happy to hear that somebody loves The Crown. It's my favorite show of all time. And also, it's really good for learning about the British history.
mm-hmm.
Even like I consider myself to be, pretty well versed in history, but I did learn quite a lot of new stuff from the series. So I think it's a good way to prepare. It's like a fun one, really well produced one. But I think that the pool of questions is quite large, right? You get 25 at the end, but it's like a few hundred questions or something like this, from what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like the pool is yeah is quite big, but I
Hmm.
would say because you have to do more than 17 or 18 questions correctly, and that's enough. And I think I would say that probably 15 of them or like maybe 12 like will always be the same. So like and
Mm,
then it's like the others like you have to be a bit maybe between like having read the things that you have to read. Like there are books that they give you and then you have just to read those books.
yeah. So it's just a lot of learning about the country, the history, the culture, and things like that, right? I think it's pretty common. I'm not sure, like maybe somebody who's watching this who have gone through immigration to various countries can let us know how common this is for other countries. So I do have experience with immigration to Poland, and there, once you were getting one of those immigration documents, you needed to go through like an oral exam with the consul at the Polish consulate, and they like it would they didn't have a specific process for doing it. It depended on the consul and what they liked. So if there was a consul who really liked linguistics, then they would kind of grill you on the Polish language that you supposedly really knew. And then if somebody really was into history, they would grill you on the Polish history and like the Polish kings and tell me about your favorite five Polish kings and why do you like them. So I don't know. To me, like actually, it sounds kind of fun, and I look forward to to studying for this because I do think that it's I don't know. I think it's good to be forced to learn about the country where you're based a little bit more than people do. So maybe there is something to it, but I guess the process of going through this, I know that process of getting the citizenship is quite emotional and just an important step for a lot of people. So do you feel that something in your life generally changed after you went through this whole process of becoming a British citizen?
Um, yeah, definitely. Like, I think, but it went a bit at the beginning. At least, it went in the other sense. I think, like when I realized I was becoming British, it made me thought a lot more about what being Bolivian means.
Mm.
I was quite happy
And-
that, like, for example, I didn't have to give away my my Bolivian citizenship.
yeah.
Because I think with some countries, you like I think with Spain, you cannot have both of them, or like with Germany, I think there is like yeah, a couple of countries, no?
Yeah, there are countries like that. So if you are interested in getting the British passport, you should check what your current country position is on that, whether you're allowed to have several passports, and check on that, because then you might have to make a difficult decision. If your country demands that you only have their passport, then you might have to make a difficult decision on renouncing your passport, which is again a difficult. Well, it's a difficult choice, right? Whether you do it or not, but it's best to be mentally prepared for that. So you said that it made you reevaluate what it means to be a Bolivian. So it's curious for me to hear what are your thoughts on that, because I'm again interested in immigration and went through immigration a couple of times. So how did it influence your thinking on that?
I mean, so like yeah, on one hand, like what made me think it was like the Bolivian passport is yeah, it's not the best one like in terms of traveling abroad. Like
Yeah.
we need like a visa even to come to Europe. Like we need a Schengen visa, whereas like most of the South American countries don't need one anymore. And yeah, I mean the countries we can go like without a visa are quite limited, and probably I don't know, there is like Russia or Iran and like probably countries that yeah you don't usually go for holidays. But so like in that sense, like to have the British passport was, I mean, it's a bit of a relief in terms of traveling. Like it's less hassle whenever you think about going somewhere. Usually, like it's either you can get maybe a visa on arrival, or you don't even need a visa.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, Um, then like I guess it also makes me think about like the fact that I don't know, for me it was strange as well because I moved to Switzerland when I was like 19 and I stayed there for like 8 years. So yeah, already at that moment I felt like, oh, like it's like Europe is so different from like what I'm used to in Latin America. In terms of like how people behave, no, like I think like we are much more warm, like very easy to like schedule things. I remember when I moved to Switzerland, the first time we were trying to plan something when I started university, and we asked the people around, like mainly the Swiss, like um, to do something on the weekend, and they already had a plan for the next 3 weeks, and
Mm-hmm.
that was like really strange for us, I think, at the moment, and like
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to meet somebody in London and scheduling a meeting, because everything in London takes so much time to get anywhere. It's crazy. And like you schedule to meet somebody and then you meet in like a month and you're like, oh, that's normal. So yeah, I do kind of I do feel for this pain of having a passport that is weak in terms of travel freedom, because I'm originally from Belarus and there is not many places where you can go with this passport. Again, like we also need, citizens of Belarus also need visas for Schengen countries to go pretty much anywhere. There are some countries where you can go without the visas, but as you said, a lot of those countries are not really places where you really enjoy spending your time. But yeah, I do understand the pain, and I think people who are watching this and who have passports that are weaker in terms of travel freedom will. This is a big motivation for a lot of people to get the British passport, actually, and because for people who are coming here from Europe, for instance, from the European Union, for them it's maybe not that much of a motivation to do it, if they have the permanent residency already. But in terms of people who don't have good passports, I think it's a big step up. So you also mentioned that you found Europe very different from South America in terms of how people are. Would you say that people in Great Britain are very different from people in Bolivia and South America in general? I mean, I know we can't generalize, but let's say in Bolivia. So, what was the big difference for you when you came here? What was the biggest culture shock, if we may say so, or something that took you the longest to get used to?
mm, so I think um, hmm, it's true that like probably London doesn't really represent whole of like UK. But like yeah, something that I wasn't used to is having like so much people around. I think there's like around maybe 8, 9 million people in just in London, and like where I come from, like in La Paz, there is just 1 million in the city. Um, Then, I mean, this thing I was telling you about, like how much, for example, in Switzerland, I felt like people plan like really a lot in advance, whereas in Bolivia, it's like there is no plan. It's very spontaneous. In that sense, I found like in London, it's kind of half in between. So it's like a bit of planning, but not that to the Swiss extent, and also not like as spontaneous in Bolivia. So that was, yeah, I found that interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In terms of like also like just mm, like it's very international, no? So it's like so normal to like just meet people from everywhere in the world. Like in you can just meet, yeah, like like people from all the continents in one day. Like
Yeah.
depending where you go, I guess. But like that's very multicultural compared to Bolivia. In Bolivia, like it's a lot of Bolivian people.
Yeah, I
um,
think it's to be expected.
yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I think that probably those are the main things that come to my mind right now.
Is there I prepare some rapid fire question. So name one thing that you really like about the UK or London, and then one thing that you really hate.
Yeah, that's a good one. Um, Something I really like here, I think, is the mentality. Yeah, there is like quite a lot of like entrepreneurship mentality, and sometimes I think that's because probably because salaries are not that great, so everybody's looking to like ways to like do different things to like either make money or like just to also like have a more interesting life in general. But like
Mhm.
yeah, I remember something that like when I was like the first flat year I lived here, there was this like poster in the fridge which just was marked like don't moan, so like just don't complain. Which I feel it's a little bit here in the mentality, like at least compared to like when I was like, not to generalize again, but in Switzerland I found like there was a bit more of like complaining just like about like little things or just finding things to complain. Not, I mean, again, not generalize, but like
Mhm.
in general, I felt it was here is a bit more of like, okay, let's do something about it. I like that, and I probably that's also why it's reflected on the such a big like entrepreneurship culture and so much like
Mm.
capital flowing around. Um, so yeah, I think that's something I like. Something I don't like here is, yeah, the fruits are really tasteless.
The what? Fruit? Fruit?
Fruits.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think like yeah, like something that I've been just thinking about for the last weeks that compared to like I don't know, like Spain or France, like the quality of like grocery shopping you can do,
Oh,
it's
yes.
much lower.
Yeah. I was wondering
So
whether you will say like just you said that the fruit are not good. I'm like just the fruit, like not the food in general. I think is one of my biggest complaints here. Honestly, the food, like people would say like the British food and the weather. I'm like the weather is fine for me. I'm from Belarus, so I'm used to cold weather and cold winters, lots of snow and no sun. So for me, British weather, London weather for me is great. But the food, the groceries, I think it's pretty shocking when you come here from Europe or from I think many countries actually. It's quite the quality. I think it is quite, and I think we're talking about like medium ranged food, right? In terms of prices, we're not talking about some fancy organic stuff that will be all right, or it will be at least edible. But I think like affordable food is quite the quality is quite low and the selection is quite low. And pretty much everybody that I talk to says something about food, no matter where they're coming from. So there should be something there. So yeah, so the food. Okay, so you don't like the food. That's the biggest complaint. And I also like how you said that the entrepreneurial spirit is probably driven by low salaries, which I've never thought about it. But now that you mention it, I do think that even people who I know who work at companies like Facebook, which pay a lot more than anybody is making here in this country. Even people there, they're always there. A lot of them are trying to hustle and to have some side of side job, side business, side income, to kind of stay to progress in life financially. Because if you compare salaries here to and just the general kind of balance of the purchasing power of your salary here to the one in the States, it's not in the favor of the UK, unfortunately. So I think people should be aware of this when they're making this kind of decision to come here or to move somewhere else, right?
Yeah, 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 definitely. I mean, and
Hmm.
it's interesting because in contrast to that, like you can find quite good like restaurant food.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you want to
I don't
cook
know.
it
I haven't.
probably.
Yeah, I haven't that much luck with restaurants either. But again, like I don't go out that much. But um, yeah, I think
And
you can if you put in some effort, you will be able to to find the stuff that you like and enjoy. So, for instance, I had a colleague who's French, and for him, it was the real. You can imagine, like, for a French person coming to the UK and having the food here, it's just an abomination. So it took him, I think, like 5 years to figure out like the whole, like, where do I buy this cheese? So it's like he found some place in the Borough Market, like there is the guy with the cheese, and you kind of have to invest time into uh, setting up your life the way you want. And yeah, we're just talking about food on an immigration stream, so which which are like actually we
important
had
consideration.
yeah, we had actually some comments about it. The British food, it's terrible. And another British food quality is definitely an issue. There is this Twitter account that is called um how's it called, British something, and I forgot, but basically they British memes or something like this, and they post pictures of British food with the hashtag best food in the world. And it just look at those pictures, I can't describe it. It's just the most disgusting stuff that you will ever see. There was another interesting comment. My biggest culture shock when I moved out of from Bolivia was not having a maid. Okay, I want to hear more about this. Does everybody in Bolivia have a maid?
I think now less, but I remember that when I was a kid, it was quite usual. Yeah, like you have somebody who will just live with the family, like help them with like cooking. Yeah, which is like, yeah, to be fair, I think it's quite a luxury that like here it will be like
Yeah.
you'll have to
Wh-
earn more than like just working at Facebook, I think.
Yeah, but
Um,
I don't know. Even people who I know that work at Facebook, they would sometimes order like a cleaning, but not somebody permanent. Was it like a thing for upper middle class families, or middle class, or upper? Like rich
I would
people.
say no. I think in Bolivia it was like quite a middle class. It was quite common
Mm,
to have a maid
wow.
because the thing is like I think ever since like they put some laws to like because what I remember is that the maid would not get really paid or like get paid very little. It will be more like she will just live in the house, like she will have her own room
Mm,
and will, I don't know, take care of the kids, do the cooking, I don't know, washing, cleaning. But in exchange of that, like she will not have to, I mean, she will eat with with us and she will like live in the house, so like no rent to pay.
mm.
And then I think
So
she'll
it's
have like
kind of
weekends
like
off, yeah. Like an au pair a
au
bit.
pair. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, maybe a bit like an au pair. Yeah.
But for au pair, it's usually foreign people who come and do this just for the experience of living somewhere. And for in your case, you were saying that these were locals, right, doing it.
Yeah, and at the same time, I mean, locals, but I would say probably like people who migrated from the countryside to the city.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, usually like the pay was quite low. I think now, I think for the last like 15 years, I think you have to pay the like minimal wage at least to somebody like who will work as a maid. But at the time, yeah, I remember like usually no, like the salary was little. Like I remember like my mom would pay for the study or things like that. But yeah, it was quite common to be honest. Mhm.
Mm, it's very interesting. And after they introduced this law about minimum pay, there mysteriously have become fewer people doing it, which is quite shocking. Not shocking at all. uh, we had a nice comment that this is such a cool stream. Yes, I agree. And just some support, very interesting info. I'm really happy for you. Uh, so we did talk about like the whole journey from all the three visas to all the way to the British passport. Um, in general, I don't have a big question, so let's look at the questions and maybe something will come up. Also, if you're watching this live, make sure to drop your questions now while we still have the time. It can be anything about like any of those visas, the permanent residency, passport, and anything else in between. Like just anything that you would like to know right now. There was this nice comment from Bolivia. We greet you and let us know that it's a pride for us that you're part of the UK community.
I think
That's
that's
very
my
sweet.
cousin.
Nice. Yeah, I also I have my relatives watching my YouTube channel from Belarus supporting me, so that's always sweet. Um, okay, quick question on a person moving from US with working visa to UK work visa. What is the preferred process? A global talent visa would work for the same with the above situation. I'm really not sure what the question means. I don't know if you understand it, Marcelo, but maybe you can clarify.
Mm, I think it's this thing that like sometimes it's easier if the company, if you're moving like within your company, because they will sort out the visa, like the skilled
Mm.
worker visa.
Hmm. Yeah,
But then again, like the global talent visa would also work, but probably the company would, it's not the one that they will apply, no? Like usually, I mean, you will have to do that application.
yeah. Yeah, so maybe Krishna, you can clarify what you meant, but they serve different purposes. I think that if you're currently working somewhere on a work visa in the United States and they can transfer you to their office here, they will grant you the skilled worker visa. A lot of people actually do it a different way, like the other way around. So a lot of people use London actually as kind of a way to move to the States because it's so hard to move to the States initially, with the H-1B lottery and all of that stuff. So some people move to the UK, they spend some time in London just working on the skilled worker, and then after a year or so, and if they're working in a big company like Google or Facebook, they get like an internal transfer to the States and then they move there. So a lot of people do it the other way around, which is again a way to move to the United States if you're interested in that. So we had this question: what documents did you submit as your mandatory evidence for the global talent visa? Is there anything that you haven't touched on in your speech earlier?
Uh, no, I don't think so. Like, I think it was mainly the like sharing knowledge, like sharing the skills, like which was like the presentations I did in back in Bolivia, and also my like the research part. No, I think that's the mandatory part.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mhm.
I also did drop a little comment about my YouTube channel. I know a lot of people are actually watching this on platforms other than YouTube. So if you are, please make sure to follow and subscribe to this channel on YouTube. There will be a lot more content around this visa and immigration there. So subscribe if you haven't. I think that's a helpful place to be. There was another question. Second. Here. How many years together did it take you for you to get your permanent residence and then citizenship?
In total, I think for permanent residence for me was like 5 years and a half, and citizenship 6 years and a half.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Pretty, I think, pretty normal in terms of I mean, pretty quick. It could have been quicker, right? If you immediately came through the skilled worker or global talent, then it can be a bit quicker.
Mm,
But yeah,
I think the minimum would be 5 years
yeah,
for
yeah,
the permanent residence, and then 6 for the citizenship.
yeah. So yeah, I do encourage people to check official gov.uk sources for information on the citizenship and the passport. but generally global talent visa is the visa that offers a pretty straightforward way to the passport if you're interested in that. And it's a visa that leads to permanent residency, which is not the case for all the visas. So if you're thinking about other visas, make sure that you can switch to permanent residency afterwards, or you will have to switch to global talent in the end. So it's also worth planning this stuff. There was another question, and yeah, again, encouraging people to drop their questions because I think we'll be wrapping up in some time. So if you waited until the last moment, then this is the moment to ask: can you study part time on the global talent visa, PhD, or masters?
I think so, yeah. I think there is no like restriction, and like I think
Hmm.
some of the people that were in the accelerator program, they were still finishing their PhDs while getting that visa, so there is no problem with that.
Yeah, exactly. There are no limits on what you can do with the global talent visa. This is why I think it's the best visa that exists in the UK. It doesn't limit you in anything. You can work for any employer. Like, you don't need a sponsorship. You can start your own business. You can, you can have your own company like an LTD, or you can work as a sole trader. You can study part-time or full-time. You can, one thing that excites a lot of people, especially people who are burnt out, just not work for some time. Which is again such a luxury, because if you're a skilled worker, I think you have to remember, if you're a skilled worker, you don't have this option of just quitting your job and chilling for a few months, because then if you quit your job, you only have 60 days to find a new job, or you have to if you have then you have to leave, right? um,
Yeah,
we
totally.
have another question about the citizenship. I honestly always get confused about the exact number of years to the passport. So I won't check it right now. So just double check the number of years, because I think I was confused about it in the past and I don't want to repeat it on record again. So just check the number of years, basically. Cool. I don't think we have any more questions here. So we can, again, maybe something else will drop now, but closing off, is there anything that you would like to share with people who are maybe in the beginning of their journey, worrying whether they should be moving to the UK, maybe they should be moving somewhere else, whether it's worth it, and any kind of tips and just your general thinking about the immigration process that you have been through, anything that, there is always something, at least for me, like, since I've been through immigration process in a number of countries now, like, there is always something that you kind of wish somebody told you in the beginning, that would have saved you a lot of time or money or just trouble. So is there anything that comes to mind like this, or just anything at all that you want to finish off with?
I think I don't know. Like I have quite a yeah. It's been quite a nice experience to live here. Definitely worth it. I think probably there is few cities in the world that have the dynamism that London has, and if like I don't know, like it's like I feel it takes just once you really want to move or like to do this jump from like I don't know like skilled worker to like global talent or like just move from a country to another one. It's the most difficult part is just to decide to do it, and then yeah, the rest is just it's a lot of work, but that I felt that that's the most difficult part. Mm.
Was it difficult for you to, in general, get used to living abroad and kind of getting over the, feeling of homesick? And I think it's a big part of, for me personally, like, being an immigrant is one of the biggest parts of my identity, honestly, more than other, characteristics. So was it difficult for you in general, like, to get used to the fact that you're now not living at home, and at least for the foreseeable future? I don't know if you're planning to return or not, but yeah, was it difficult, and was there anything that helped you on this journey?
Um, so I think that's something that also I took into account when applying for global talent. As you said, like you can take a couple of months off, um, and like at the time, remote work was not as common as it is now. So in my head was also like if I have this visa, I could always like when I change jobs, maybe take a couple of months off and go back to Bolivia and be with my family. So like now, like, for me, that's a bit the case, and that was like something that was quite helpful. That like because of this visa, I have like I work independently, so like I have projects that can last between 3, 6 months, maybe sometimes a bit more. But then in between those projects, I can go and be like in Bolivia for like 2, 3 months and then come back. I mean, then okay, you still have to think about like what I'm going to do with my room or like because rent is expensive or all these other things. But to be able to do that, I think it's quite nice. Like it helps me like cope with like that part of missing
Hmm.
family and friends in and my country like Bolivia, no?
Yeah. I think it's quite valuable. Like just having the opportunity to go back home. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, a lot of my audience, they don't have the opportunity to go home. But I think that I think that the stability of the visa still gives you peace of mind, especially if you can't go home for some political or geopolitical reasons. I think having the visa is a big part of just being confident about your future, and it helps so much. So that's why I'm spending a lot of time advocating for people just really taking control of their immigration situation, because I have seen too many people not really bother with this too much and then regret it a lot. And also, from my experience, things like programs like this, like the global talent visa, they don't always change, stay the same. Things have the tendency of changing and very often not for the best. So I hope that this live stream encourages viewers to think about whether immigration is something that you are interested in, and if the UK is the destination that you are interested in. Please subscribe on YouTube. There is so much information there about this particular visa that you can take it and just apply on your own. Or if you're interested to have like more personalized support, you can also get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to help. Um, what else? We don't have any more questions, so I think we can wrap up. I don't think we have anything else to cover, so we can just wrap up. I would like to thank everybody for watching this. We had really a record attendance on this live stream for Monday evening. I'm very happy that so many people were watching this live, and I'm sure more people will watch it as a recording. But I think this is all thanks to our guests. So thank you so much, Marcelo, for spending all this time and telling us your story and sharing and just inspiring everybody with your story.
Ah, thanks, Nadia. It was really a lovely chat.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for watching. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye.